And I would love to introduce you all to Melanie, Abby, David, and Deborah, this week's Mentor Mondays. And I'm going to give them a little bit of a chance to introduce themselves because I always like to do that, particularly for Mentor Mondays. It's really tough to sometimes articulate what we do and what we are and who we are. So I always like to give everyone a chance to do that. Oh, and we already have questions already. Boy, see, Tatenda is on it. She is on it. All right. So, Abby, would you like to start?
Yeah, sure.
Give us a little intro.
Okay, I'm Abimbola Johnson. Everyone calls me Abby, and I am a barrister. I work in chambers called 25 Bedford Row, and I specialise in criminal defence and professional regulatory work. So things like regulation of nurses, doctors, healthcare professionals mostly.
Perfect. Thank you. And Deborah, I'm going clockwise in my screen.
I'm Deborah. I work as a business analyst at Ofgem. So those that are not familiar with the acronym, Ofgem is the regulator for energy, for the energy industry, so gas and electricity. And I work in a kind of techie department at the moment. So, yeah.
Oh, really? A techie department? We'll talk about that afterwards. and David?
I have to give you grace.
No. Nice try, because David's the only one who gets grace, because he said that he already mentioned the flu word. So, and then David.
Hi everyone, my name is David Fisayo, and I am a technology consultant at KPMG. And what I do is primarily advising financial services on how can they use new technology to better serve their customers or reduce costs, and also help build enterprise apps for big companies. And outside of my day-to-day job, I'm also a strategy director for a social enterprise called Foundervine. And what we do is work with young people from diverse backgrounds who want to get into entrepreneurship and build that talent pool.
Entrepreneurship. So you work for a big company, but then you also help young people with entrepreneurial ventures.
Correct, yes.
What do you do? How do you help them do that?
So it's really like a big network community. So we run a lot of community events, which is around just connecting people. So you have 6-10 years experience, 20 years experience. We bring young people together to their network and meet people who are like them, who have been through that journey.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also run a 3-day incubator event called Startup 54. And the concept behind that is each event will have a theme. And we have about 60 aspiring entrepreneurs who come together on a Friday, and then they're supported through the weekend with masterclasses, mentoring, and just helping them take the idea from A to B. And then they pitch on a Sunday. So.
Nice. And then do you help them with funding?
Yes. So we work through our kind of network of people who can provide funding, VCs or startups. It's about connecting people and giving them the right opportunities.
Okay. And so I guess we'll take a step back, because I went a bit deep there, and you'll see the method to my madness later on when we talk about kind of entrepreneurial ventures. So I guess describe your route to success. Would you describe yourself as a success right now, Deborah? I'm pointing at you. Would you describe yourself as a success? And honest.
So I like to think of success in kind of incremental steps rather than a one big bang kind of milestone. So I would say I feel for myself anyway that I'm a success, because so far what I've set out to do each year or each month I've achieved. Some I haven't achieved, but I found a way around it and didn't allow that to stop me. So in a short kind of way, yes, in my own terms. Yeah.
Okay, so success on your terms. And can you tell me what that is? Like, describe to you what your terms are. It's a term that I use a lot, success on your own terms. So what would that mean for you?
I think it's firstly realizing what it is I'm good at or capable of, and understanding that, yes, I may not have those skills to kind of live up my full capability at this moment in time. Once I've identified what I need to do, kind of literally day by day, doing whatever it is required of me to reach those or tick off those kind of steps. I think success is also measured by my growth. So if I look back to where I was 6 months ago or a year compared to where I am today, how much tangible growth can I really say that, I've been through? So my growth versus, and I don't really look externally. I think it's really easy to kind of say, especially in this tech, oh, I've been a DevOps for X amount of years. That's not me. However, where I'm trying to get to, I can say I've grown in terms of leadership skills. I can say I've grown in terms of my role, business analysis. I can say I'm grown in terms of coding. So for me, I'm ticking off those steps that I've laid out for myself.
And so 15 years ago, Abimbola or Abby, would you prefer Abby or would you prefer your full Abimbola?
Abby's probably easier to roll to tell.
Okay. Would you say, looking at yourself maybe 10 to 15 years ago, are you where you thought you would be?
No, but I wouldn't say that's a bad thing.
No, it's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing at all.
Yeah. So no, I think it's like what how Deborah was saying. I would actually say that if I defined success in the same way that I did when I was 15 or 16, which how old I would have been 15 or 16 years ago, I haven't progressed. Like if my 15 or 16-year-old idea of success is what defines me as a 31-year-old woman, that would cause me concern. So
That's true. It's true.
Also, but actually at the same time, there are a lot of elements in terms of the broader picture, which I have managed to realise from where I would be at 15 or 16. And I think that similar to what Deborah was saying, sometimes you can be quite caught up with others, so you lose a sense of yourself and you fail to recognise those successes that you have had subjectively because you're too concerned with how other people define your journey. So obviously, being a barrister, it's because it's a vocation. It's the kind of job that I have had to work to, or at least personally that I have worked to since I was about 15 or 16 when I was choosing my A-levels. That was based on how I could get into a law degree at Oxford. When I was at Oxford, I was navigating my degree based on this idea that my end goal was to go to the bar. And then when I got to the bar, my work has been, really concentrated on fostering the type of practice that I have now. But like Deborah said, I haven't got the practice that I can see myself having at the end of my career. But I'm certainly where I need to be on that journey to get to where I want to go, whilst also leaving options open so that, again, if my idea of where I want to go, my path evolves, there's space for me to move around. Like for example, at the moment I'm in this webinar in a hotel in Cardiff. I can honestly that at the age of 15 or 16 I did not imagine one day night I'd be
yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it. I don't think the web existed when I was maybe around 10. When was it invented? 12? Yeah, I couldn't have imagined doing something like this for my own home, certainly. Not even a panel. I asked kind of those questions just to figure out what success means to you, because my definition, it's changed over the years, and it's been really tough just trying to hold myself to my own standards rather than some of the standards that are around me. And so, David, other people have called you a success, so it's not, it's kind of well acknowledged now that all three of you guys are successful. So how do you celebrate and acknowledge success, your success? How do you do that? Do you do that? Put my hand up. I don't. I'm not very good at it.
Yeah.
I probably need a therapist or something. Like the A-type personality that just kind of keeps on driving. I'm not very good at stopping and saying, let's celebrate my success today. So do you do that? How do you acknowledge your own success?
Good question. So I think it's I think there's a two phase. One, I would say yes. Do take moments to pause and actually remind yourself and acknowledge, oh, you have done what you set out to achieve. So it is a success. And I think
That's the
sometimes
advice that you give young people. I get that. I say that all the time.
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, celebrate, acknowledge your success. But I'm asking you, brother man,
yeah.
how do you celebrate your success?
Okay, fair. That's good. Well, I do take the very immediate moment. I guess if I had something happen on a day and I acknowledge that was a good thing, I would. I say celebrate. Celebrate is a great word, but if I got a promotion, I will go with some friends, maybe go for a drink, or yeah, acknowledge and be in the moment. I do also think I always look at success also being this like a long journey. So there are moments where something good has happened that is successful, but I'm still doing other things and still on this other journey. So I don't take. I wouldn't say I don't take too much. Yes, but I don't pause for a week going, oh my gosh, I've achieved this. Therefore, forget about all the other things I was actively working on in parallel.
I see. So, okay, what other bits of advice do you guys say, like, that you say but you don't do yourself? What's one piece of advice that you give to others, and you know it's good practice, but you don't do it yourself? Be honest.
Oh, I've got one. I think what we were just talking about before the webinar even started, which is, I mean, I think also in my position, I very often give people advice, but like I don't follow through with it on a personal level, like at all.
Because you can tell thyself.
Yeah, one thing is record keeping in terms of finances. So before the webinar started, when we were kind of like testing the camera and the microphone, Ben and I were having a bit of a chat about the fact that actually one really simple step to take in terms of business success and even personal kind of financial well-being is just to even just keep a record of your spending before you even make adjustments or make a budget. Just actually having a knowledge of where your money is going, and that is definitely something that I don't do. And I know I can see the logic behind it, and like for loads of reasons it would be a really good idea for me to do it, because obviously I'm self-employed, so I have to submit a tax return at the end of each tax year, and if I just updated my spreadsheet every week or every month, then it would give me a much better idea of where my money is, where it's gone, even if I don't actually change my behavior on it. But that's something that I haven't done, and Mel touched upon it, and I think actually really it's because it's not something I grew up with. It wasn't really a kind of like ingrained or innate character trait that I was particularly exposed to, whereas my husband, who, and I do think this is significant, bringing race into it, my husband is white and English, and he's very good at stuff like that. Like he always knows where his money, you know, like Jack will say, oh, I don't have any money, and like he has like £1,000 left over from something, but to him that's like not having any money, because he's like in his mind, in his mental, he's like, I actually need this money for XYZ. If I say I don't have any money, it means like, it was no money.
I know. I think and that it's so funny that you mentioned that in relation to our conversation with success. And you know, just want to say welcome to everyone who's just like popping on. I'm seeing all these names pop up. And we just went right in. Listen to the replay if you want the intros, but I know that this will be valuable for you guys. Send questions through. I will definitely try to incorporate them into the discussion here so that you guys can get the answers you need. And we are being open and frank. You are so right, because there's something about, we had a conversation, I'm going back to this, a conversation, it was myself, it was like a multicultural kind of women leader conversation. So there was one Far East Asian woman, one Southeast Asian woman, me, the Black woman, a white English woman, a white American woman, and it was just but there was one from each. And we were having a candid, kind of intimate conversation in regards to money and finances. So I'd kind of held a focus group. And some of the things that people were raised with in regards to money and finance, and it's not necessarily that their parents kind of sat them down and said, here's Excel and this and that, but there was definitely some kind of cultural differences in regards to my friend she was Russian Jewish, and my friend who is Chinese, and just the way that their financial freedom was woven into their regular everyday lives with their parents is very different from how I was raised personally. And from what I'm finding from some of the surveys, it's really difficult So I totally get you in regards to knowing what I should be doing and then not doing it. And I think that's also impacted what we think of as success as well, because by any measure, Abby, you are successful. You're in one of the most famous, but Bedford Row is no joke. Bedford Row, it's amazing. And it's so lovely to hear, wait a minute, there are some times when you don't have the loot. My friend's a managing director at UBS, and she's like, Mel, I only paid off my credit card debt when I reached 45. And I'm like, yes, that's what we need to talk about, my friends. Like, because she wasn't raised up with that whole mentality, and so it also prevents us from thinking that we're successful, right? When you have that kind of, because wealth is so associated with it. So, Deborah, what do you say to other people, and you should do, but very well you don't do it in terms of success and business success and career success?
I think the biggest, most repetitive piece of advice I give that I still don't do myself is being transparent and open. I think I don't know if it's a cultural thing or a woman thing or a me thing, but I don't find it natural to open up about things I'm doing, things I'm either doing well, things I'm struggling with. So sharing success is not even on the equation because I don't share full stop. So it's always a surprise if something pops up on LinkedIn, like the BBBA awards. And, I didn't know you do. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, yeah, because I don't talk about it. And I think it's an issue because you find people who are in a similar line of work or similar aspirations or similar struggles even, that they don't know anyone else is going through it because the person next to them is not talking. And I think, for me anyway, I know it's a responsibility rather than a good to do to share and to be transparent about, for example, if I was doing a project separate to work, talking about, I'm just starting up this thing, anyone have ideas, put it out to, a safe environment or friends or your networks. And also if something didn't go so well, also sharing that, because I think there is learning in any type of experience. So that when it comes to success, because you're so used to sharing, it's a given. It's, oh yeah, and by the way, I take that thing I was struggling with a month ago, or by the way, I did X and Y. I guess the negative thing about sharing success only, you find things like Instagram influencers and people out there that their life always looks good. It just always looks good. There's never any problems, no issues. And that's because we are prone to sharing purely the success but not the journey. So I think one advice I definitely say is sharing that journey with others and being open about it. Yeah, so that's something I'd say.
Yes, you're right. It's tough. My friend is a strategic sharer, though. There is sharing doesn't necessarily mean sharing on a world stage or on a platform like a social media platform. It's also about being able to share, conveniently when the chairman of the board is in the room. We want to make sure that it's pointed sharing, strategic sharing, that it's not necessarily just kind of PR kind of blast. But I've always, someone really wise told me that, Mel, your social media platform should be only 1/3 about yourself. Maybe 1/3, you're sharing other people's content and celebrating other people. And then 1/3 about, your business and your core kind of brand and messaging, which is not yourself. It's more about, well, for me, it's money and economic empowerment. So if you do that balance, then it doesn't feel like your social media is a self-promo tool, because I know that's a reluctance that a lot of people have, that if I say if I kept on saying, I've won this award today and I'm doing this today and it's whack, it's dry. I mute those people. Mute has a heavy usage on my social media accounts because I don't want to hear all of that stuff, and I get so I do understand your reluctance. So what are we gonna do? Let's think about let's think about the pledge that you guys will make at the end of this Mentor Monday in each of these key areas. What the promise. But you guys, if you have any suggestions for our beautiful mentors in terms of a challenge, like a pledge that they will make us, that they'll make in this specific area, then just please put it in the box. I am here for you. I see, Lena, Laurencia, Ilian, Stephen, thank you guys so much for coming and joining us. Really appreciate that. I know it's late, but just join right in. David.
Yeah.
So when people have told you no, last week we spoke about no, and when people have told you no, or when you've suffered a setback, then can you tell us like a little story about a time you did a step back and then you said, I'm going to either keep on going and it worked out, or I'm going to keep on going and it didn't work out, but that's okay.
So I think so since I started working, something I considered my biggest setback at a point in time, which has later, in hindsight, actually been something that's propelled me to where I am today. So it was in 2015, I actually left KPMG for a year to go and work in a startup. And it was against, I guess, advice of my parents. Nigerian family, it's very much, why do you want to leave services? To go and work here, yeah. So again, it was 100%, it was against, I basically said, this is what I want to do, I'm going to do it. I was a little bit stubborn and just went to chase what I thought were my dreams at the point in time. I started working very closely with the CEO at the startup, and it basically, after a very short while, wasn't this green grass that I saw, and I thought I was going to become super rich and it'll be fun, but it was ended up being probably double the of efforts of working where I was working previously. Mm-hmm. We started going through a big funding issue, and all of a sudden I was in a situation I'd just never been in before. And a year later, actually, the company went down, and I became unemployed. And it was my parents, again, very jokingly, but it was that kind of not I told you so moment, but it was you made a choice against advice, and you're now experiencing something you shouldn't necessarily be experiencing. But what I did at that point in time was, so initially I was obviously down, like sad, like, okay, what's happening? What am I going to do next? And just not really sure about what my next moves were going to be. And I think in hindsight, what kind of worked in that situation was actually pushing myself. So for the first time, I think I knew what my limits were, and been able to sit down and actually think back and go, trying to take the lessons out of the situation. And also, despite everything going really, really bad, I actually gained so much skills, which when I even came back to KPMG, made me way better at my job, actually made me more prominent. Part of the work I do at the moment with the social enterprise, it's part of my experience working in the startup space has made it possible. Connections I made in the time. So it was like a moment of, I thought this was the end of the world, but in hindsight, it's actually been a lot of the reason why I'm where I am today or right now.
Yeah, it's amazing. And you guys can talk to each other, right? Like, you don't have to wait for me. No, it's amazing because when you're in it, it doesn't feel like it. Like there were some times I remember Sophie and I, even with the awards, we were like, yo, how are we going to get through this, girl? How are we really going to get through this? Like, it was just so much work. And it was just her and I. And even though we had, kind of a bit of a team around us, Sophie and I knew that it was going to be us at 3:00 in the morning, making sure that things were right. And it was exhausting. And now you're right. You learn your limits. You learn what you're capable of. The experience has leapfrogged me in other ways in other parts of my life. But when I was in it, I did not think I was going to get through it. I didn't think I thought it was going to kill my brand. I thought, I just thought, what have I done here,
Yeah.
And so it's really sad when you said that you don't think you celebrate successes enough, when obviously the way I know you is through the awards, which is entirely through you celebrating other people's success.
Yes. Slightly ironic. We didn't think it was gonna roll. We didn't think it was gonna roll for in the beginning. With the awards, the pack or the idea was in 2010. The pack and the kind of the PowerPoint of its vision was 2012. 2013 is when we got sponsorship. 2014 was the first year. And so I remember that last time, remember Sophie was there Sophie was in the US for Barack Obama's inauguration. And I remember just getting the call from my friend at EY, and she was like, Mel, how come you haven't sent me this? And I was like, what do you mean? And she's like, but we're sponsoring you. And I was like, you didn't tell me that. And she's like, oh, sorry, I thought you knew. And I was like, are you kidding me? And so I remember calling Sophie, and I hear the crowd in the background. And that's why we remember this moment so much. I was like, girl, we did it. And she's like, what? And I was like, we got sponsorship. And she's like, and it'd been after a long, hard slog. And so we thought we were at the end. And there were so many other guises. I always said this, the Center for African Progress. No one knows about that. No one knows about the Center for African Progress, even though there were a lot of people working on it, but it just didn't turn out. And so you just think, you do get caught up. Oh, we got questions though. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry for monopolizing my friends, people who are watching. So do you think that failure or setbacks are an important part of success? Tatenda is asking us. Do you, Deborah?
Yeah, I'll share a quick story. So when I was doing my A-levels, had quite a journey. I remember doing my mocks and not getting the grades I needed to for university. And my maths teacher was like, you will never do maths in your life. I'm not changing your predicted grade. Just forget about it before you get to uni. Guess who went and studied financial maths at uni? But when I went to uni, got into do maths at uni, and then besides my degree, I started this social enterprise, I'd call it. It was called Mr. and Mrs. ACS UK, and it was a cultural pageant across around 30 to 40 universities in the UK. And it's just celebrating Black excellence, but also equipping them with skills that they would need in a workplace. And it's completely new, just an idea I had the summer of second or first year, and I just ran with it, just went with it. The most difficult part, as Mel has spoken about, was funding. It was so difficult. However, we managed to get funding from a small source for first year, managed to get second year. Second year I was doing it. In the second year I was doing it, I got a letter from the university saying, you won't finish with an honours degree, you're going to finish with a diploma. Because I put so much effort and energy into this social enterprise, I had neglected what my parents sent me to university.
Oh, Lord. You're like a parent's worst nightmare. That's like our parents' nightmare right now.
I did not tell my parents. I went on my knees and I prayed. That's the first thing I did. The crazy thing is that at the back of that, I did an extra year and I pressed on and I pushed. At the back of me doing this social enterprise project was how I got my graduate job, not because of my degree, not because of my university, but because of something that had nothing to do with energy. And for me, it was just a weird complex, because it's like, if I had taken the traditional route and perhaps just focused on my studies, just went to do what I went to do, I would nowhere near have grown as much as I did in terms of resilience, number one. Because when you get those no's, those letters, or those emails, correspondences saying, sorry, we can't fund you, sorry, we can't do this, sorry, you're not going to finish with a degree, sorry, you're not going to do maths at university. There's something in you that well, in me anyway, that ticked and said, their no is not the final answer. And I think with that, it just helps you build this strength that regardless of what comes your way, if you know you've done this before, there's nothing you can't do again. So I think having setbacks and having those really builds the thick skin and the belief in yourself that you can do it. So I think it is really important to have those periods of time where you feel like quitting and you feel like it's not going to happen, because when it does happen, and there will be times it won't, but there will be times it does, that will give you the inner strength that no one else can take away.
Yeah, I totally agree. I had a sort of setback when I finished my first pupillage, which is sort of like a barrister's version of the training contract. And it was at my dream set of chambers. It's called QB Hollis Whiteman. They're an excellent set of chambers, and people are really nice, and they get amazing kind of financial crime cases, which is the best kind of area to be in if you want to earn money and have intellectually challenging work and so on. And I got rejected by them at the end of it. And there were 4 of us, there were 4 pupils, and the other 3 were taken on. I was the only one who was rejected. That really kind of like compounded it. It wouldn't have been quite as bad if I had like a buddy with me, but they all got taken on and I got rejected. And that was honestly the first time. So I was 23, and I can honestly say that was the first time in my life that I had ever worked for something and had failed. And I'm so glad that it happened then, because it was going to happen at some point. No one has a perfect record. And actually, I'm so glad it happened then, because it happened at the beginning of my career. It happened, when I was in a position when I was still living at home. I had that cushion of my family being around me. But it also meant that I then had to, for the first time, really sit down and think about why I wanted to be a barrister, what I wanted to put into it, what I was willing to sacrifice. Like David picked up on it, set up these kind of like parameters as to what I would put up with, what I didn't want to put up with. And like Deborah was saying, it gives you this moment to kind of recalibrate and really refocus. And it gave me a lot of drive. And I think, if I'm perfectly honest and look back at my time at QB, I think I had become a little bit complacent. It wasn't that I wasn't working hard, but I think I wasn't working as hard as I could have. And I was still presenting like really good work, but it wasn't my absolute best work. And yeah, I think I kind of got to a point where I thought, well, normally if I work pretty hard and do, 90, if I work at 90%, then I tend to do well. And, but in this type of environment where we are and at the stage that we are, actually very often that's still not good enough. Like, quite frankly, there's always somebody who is putting in that extra percent to you. Like, I think when I dream, like, when you come home with the A- and your parents ask you if Jonathan had 2 heads and why is Jonathan it was like the epitome of that. And I think I had actually got to a point where I'd become a little bit complacent, so I needed that to tell me that I needed to work hard. And then since then I've had other types of rejection or other types of failures, like when I've had cases where I've done everything right, I've prepared absolutely everything, and I still haven't persuaded a judge to see my argument, or a jury still has convicted my client. And I think sometimes actually you just need to accept that there will be times when you're just going to fail, like even when you've worked really hard. But again, it's about like building up that character and building up that resilience. So yeah, I would say definitely you do need to fail, because you need to know what failure is and be able to separate that from success to be successful. Yeah, you definitely need to have failed at things.
Yeah, you need to fail. So Tatenda, I hope that was an amazing answer to your question. And I love this book. So it's one of the books that we teach at the beginning of all of our MBA courses, the EMBA as well as the MBA, and it's on the growth mindset. So this woman, Carol Dweck, came up with it. And so I have like 50,000 copies because I always give it to all of my students. And it is about that failure and setback. And there's this amazing study that was done at the University of Hong Kong, where the group was given, a cohort of students was divided into 3, and they were given different types of feedback. So one of the sets of feedback was, wow, you must be so smart. You're amazing. That's so great. You had a great score. And the second group got the, wow, that's a good score. You must have worked really hard. And then the third just got, hey, that's a great score. So literally, they did non-verbal IQ questions or quizzes throughout the year. And you found that people who got the praised their work ethic and praised the fact that they were working hard, in fact, worked harder, and then their test results went up throughout the year. Where those who were praised on just being a success or being really smart, then their test scores actually fell throughout the year because they took for granted the amount of work that had to be done. And so it's a whole thing in the New York Times. It's about kind of going through failure and setback. And then when you do that, you understand more what success takes in terms of the work. Like, you become more strategic. Look at Steve Jobs. You don't tell that story. Steve Jobs got fired from his own company. You have to, like Apple. People don't talk about the road to, right? We just talk about, we arrived. We don't really talk about the road to. Like, that man got fired from his own company. I'm talking about Apple people. I'm not talking about like, blueberry. No, I'm talking about apple. And we don't talk about those things. I think on the other side of it, though, with success, oh man, people are blowing up this. I gotta look at people. When you think about on the other side of success, you do have to. There's a trap that you cannot fall into in terms of trying new things. So you can kind of roll on in the success in the route that you have. Right now, I'm starting this new course, and it's all stuff that I haven't done before, and I'm scared because I have success. So there's a level of expectation where Mel caned the last thing that she did, so she got to cane this too. And I'm like, and it almost scared me out of doing it instead of kind of stepping back and being a beginner. Adults do it all the time. That's why we don't start anything new. We don't learn how to dance anymore. We don't have our go. When you're a kid, you have your go because the expectation levels are so low. But so yes, failure and setback are an important part of success, and I encourage you to read. Oh, they already have this book. Oh, look at y'all. All y'all already have this book. You guys should see the comments. The comments are blowing up. Thank you. So yes, you do have this book. Get this book. It's one of the best books in the world. Look at the TED Talk from Long Beach. Oh, we have more questions, guys. So better I ask the questions from the team. So Lena says, has confidence in the workplace, particularly as a minority, been an important catalyst to your success? Confidence in the workplace, particularly as a minority. You think that it's been important?
100%.
Has it contributed towards your success? David, we haven't heard your voice for a while. Bring it.
100%. I put it out. So I think generally in the workplace, everybody needs to be confident because you are there for a reason. They hired you because you have skills they want. And it's a scenario of so I do a lot of mentoring with junior grads who come in and they want to understand how do you interact with senior stakeholders? How do you interact with senior teams? And I always kind of say, it's not like rocket science in a sense, but being able to speak, and if you have a thought and you have a view and there's a reason behind it, never ever, always be able to speak in the scenario and say it. It's what one is going to build your confidence because you realize, you said something that's sensible, and you continue to grow, and then you get noticed from senior people from doing that, and that again helps you continue to grow. So I think confidence is very, very key because those who are confident will speak and get their points across a lot.
So then how does one develop that confidence? So I know that, so let's just kind of go really practical. Before I was on TV, I had a dream, and so I volunteered at the radio station on the weekends while I was working at EY. During the week, I set up a video camera and I spoke to my video camera every single day. I did a video diary so I could get used to my voice and so I can get used to what I looked like. I took presentation courses, I took presenter courses as well. I wanted to be on screen. So it's practical as well. There's something about being used to it. I wouldn't expect kind of a young person just be like, hey, some people are comfortable. We all know those people comfortable in front of the camera. But what if you're uncomfortable? How did you develop confidence in your area of expertise? Anyone?
I think some of it is language. It's sometimes it's not even changing what you're saying, it's changing how you say it. So there's a lot of studies, and I can't think of the actual kind of provenance of these, but for example, boys do better in exams because when they answer questions, they make the propositions fact. They don't have anything like the kind of caveats that a lot of women use. I think that blah blah, or it may be that blah blah. A guy is more likely to say, this is what it is. And actually, if you're in a meeting or if you're in a situation and you say, this is the position, people are less likely to even question the basis on which you've made that proposition in the first place. It's actually when you demonstrate hesitation and when you show that you're kind of second guessing yourself, people start to second guess you. So sometimes you just need to be a bit more ballsy. So you're still saying the same thing, but you're saying it in a different way. And I think also, particularly as a woman, I very often find, so I sit on various committees at work, and I also sit as a school governor, and do and obviously make submissions in court and so on. And what I have definitely seen in terms of like the gender divide is that a man will tell you how much work he has put into something, like just instinctively he will tell you. You'll never question, like you'll never be left to question it. If a guy comes into court and he has drafted a skeleton argument overnight, and as a result has had to stay up late, they've missed a match, they've not been able to go for beers with their friends or whatever, he will make sure that when he submits that document. Whereas I think with women, there's more of this kind of attitude of, oh, well, someone has asked this of me, or this needs to be done, so I'm going to get it done, and I'm just going to submit it without a fuss. And we kind of think that actually, if we highlight the effort that has gone into pieces of work, or if we highlight the amount of research or time that has gone into something, that we are complaining in some way, or that we're showing a lack of competence. And I think that actually part of being your own champion and being confident is letting people know why it is that you say what you're saying, and letting people know the effort that you have gone to do things, and like tooting your own horn and not being embarrassed to do that. And I think that then actually people then recognise the effort that has gone into stuff, and it feeds into everything. So I mean, I'm self-employed, so it's not quite the same, but I definitely have noticed with my female friends, a lot of them tell me that they put a lot of work into various roles, that they've noticed that some of their male counterparts don't work as much as they do, but talk about how much work they do. And it's an easier case for them to make when it comes to pay rises, because everyone's fully aware of the amount of work that they've done. Whereas with the women, they haven't laid that foundation in the same way, because then they haven't been as vocal about those.
I think there's a bit of an echo.
Pause. Is that okay now?
Mm-hmm.
Weird.
I heard that. Is anyone guys on the line? Are you guys listening? If you can hear an echo, then let me know, because I don't hear it now, obviously, because I'm talking. But just let me know. But you're right. It's the articulation, and I think you really hit a point, Abby, with Stephen on the line, because he's asking, kind of to delve deeper into it, what if you work in an organization that's stuck in a silo culture? Because often in meetings, he's the youngest and he's also the only minority, and so it can be difficult to get his voice heard. And so is there any advice that you guys can give on navigating these kind of difficult spaces? Thanks, Stephen, for your question. Whoop, whoop. What do you think, David or Deborah?
I probably had a very similar experience when I started my first job. Again, I was the only black young person in my team at that time for probably 6 to 12 months. And like you said, you can be in the meeting with people that have 20 years of industry knowledge, 35, 10, and you're there with 6 months not knowing a jack thing of what they're talking about. However, you do have something that you feel like you can contribute, but you hold yourself back because you don't want to seem incompetent, or you don't want them to look at, oh, this person doesn't know anything. So at that, the more we don't speak, it eats away at our confidence even more. And I think I had to get to a point where I had to self-coach myself, that being quite present and aware of what's going on within me and challenging that within myself, because I can't expect that those around the table are going to be like, oh, Deborah, do you have anything to say? Unless they're really nice, observant people. But I had to make that decision within myself to, when I am feeling like I need to say something, say it. Watching videos on like TED Talks, books, and talking to people about it as well really helps me. And more importantly, practice. Luckily for me, my last organization had a lot of training available, so I did lots of stuff on like self-impact, awareness, leadership, presentation skills. And the more you get out there and practice, the more you see yourself actually being able to do it in actual reality. But I think it is a question to reflect on yourself in terms of why you don't feel confident to do that, and whether you are creating that boundary within yourself or the environment is. Because very likely that we are quick to say, oh, I'm the only one here, so therefore they're seeing me this way. But it's usually, I'm not saying all the times, but a lot of the times it is within ourselves or within our challenge ourselves with that barrier that we are the only one. If you're the only Black person, you are unique. You have a way of thinking that they may not have, and they need it in that team to see your uniqueness as a skill that they need. So yeah.
Also, you're in the team, so it's not as though you're speaking in a group that you haven't been invited to. Like you have a seat at the table. So it's actually that it's like you say. I think that, so I found, for example, the transition between being a pupil barrister to being a tenant barrister quite difficult. I found pupillage really difficult because actually, as a pupil, in many respects, you were expected not to speak. Because actually, I didn't have a seat at the table yet. I was there mostly as an observer. And then when you switched to becoming a tenant, I had some of that kind of carryover, especially because I had the rejection from my first set of chambers into the second. And I think anyone who knows me could say that they don't believe. But I did have to build up to be more outspoken in those environments. And really was that's why I'm here. That I may be the only person, or I may be the only tenant in this room, but I'm in the room, and so actually I need to speak because there is a reason why I'm here. Otherwise, I'm just me in the room. So that's the purpose of my being here. So yeah, you're definitely right, Deborah. But I do think that there is an extra layer of it when you are the only ethnic minority, and when you are actually in that position where the burden is upon you to navigate or to change the narrative in the room. Then it's really, really difficult. If you're there and actually what you're saying is something which is opposed to the general feeling in the room, I still think that is a really tricky area to speak up in. So a tip that I would give actually would be to try and see if you can find a particular mentor or a champion at work who doesn't necessarily have to be another person of colour or of the same gender or age group as you, but maybe just somebody who you can kind of align yourself with in certain situations, so that you know when you go into a meeting you have an ally who will kind of speak with you, or at least hear you out during the course of that meeting and give you some of that space if you do find it difficult to speak out in situations.
And hey, sometimes you don't have to talk.
Yeah.
There's a lot of introverts out there who very much choose their words wisely and choose their timing wisely, Stephen. And so, what's worse is, particularly with consultants, when we speak too much and we're filling space. And so you find that the best partners in professional services, they listen to the whole conversation and then they come in at the end and summarize all of the thoughts, because they've had a chance to kind of process them in their own practical words in the language that the client understands and knows. And so perhaps don't kind of force yourself to kind of put yourself out there before your time. And as my mother would say, you don't want to eat force-ripe fruit. So, but if there is something very particular that's on your heart and mind to speak, then that's, kind of look at the lay of the land and see if it's in a public kind of meeting setting, then, and really make sure that whatever you say it with that, the impact and gravitas, rather than just opening up your mouth and and adding to the noise, because that's not the right way either. So it's a fine balance.
Also, because meetings are quite reactionary, aren't they? Sometimes you say things because you think it's the right thing to say. It's not actually reflective of your overall view about something. So I guess feeding off what Mel has said, like maybe actually even think about whether if this is something that needs to be said in the meeting, or could this be like an interesting point that I could write an article about later, or some sort of like written work that can then be used moving forward, or a report or something like that, which actually may have more impact because it's written down, has your name to it, people know that it's the fruits of your own labour, rather than just saying it in a meeting. And if anything, sometimes giving that idea to somebody else for them to then kind of
exactly. And when you respond to the minutes, then you appear very thoughtful as well. So like, I was thinking about this, so it feels like you were, that the idea has importance and residue with you. and then you have the opportunity to really process it. And so that's a common trick that they use in terms of influencing skills. That if you're not entirely comfortable with putting yourself out there in a large meeting or even a smaller meeting with many people, then there are different ways where you can still own your idea and input. So I don't want you to go and tell one person. That won't work, because that person may run with your idea, especially if you're more junior. But then maybe it could be about responding to the minutes or kind of those summary emails that are sent out after the meeting. But thanks so much, Stephen. I hope that helped just a little bit. I mentioned The Mindset as one of the books that I gift the most. So what's the book that you gift the most to others? Because I know y'all read.
Mine is Slay in Your Lane. I love that book.
Oh, that's nice. Yay, Elizabeth will tell them. Shout out to Slay in Your Lane, ladies. Yes, yeah. That's a big gifter.
So
why?
So, I mean, first of all, I started to read it because Yomi and Liz both went to uni with one of my friends, and I'd met them vaguely, and now I've become more friendly with them. But also just because I think that book, it just kind of, I think so much of a lot of the issues that we face as Black British professionals is that you spend a lot of time wondering whether microaggressions or things that you feel at work are all in your head, or if they've actually happened. And that book is almost cathartic because you read it and everything is backed up by statistics. Like, everything in there lets you know that you're not mad, and that even if actually that particular scenario was not a microaggression, you're not a moron thinking that it at least might have been. And it kind of, I think very often with these things, we just want to know that other people have felt what we have felt, so then you can put it to one side and then you can crack on with the way that you go about your work. And I think Slay in Your Lane is a really brilliant book for that. And I think actually it's just as applicable to men as it is to women in terms of kind of like the objectives and the things that you can learn from it and the nuances within it. So yeah, that is one book that I definitely send around to people. And then another book, which isn't really to do with business, but it's Why I No Longer Talk to White People About Race.
Rennie?
Yeah, which I have, I admit sometimes passively aggressively just kind of ordered on Amazon and sent to somebody. Oh no, what have they said? That I think Zara is listening as well, part of our social media team. Zara, please don't tweet that part that Abby gives that book passively aggressively to people. That's just sorry, I'm just gonna give a little bit of I need to take a little bit of a pit stop. I'm gonna come back to the other books. What happens when they receive that book? And who are these?
Aggressive.
That is terrible. So yeah. So what happens when you get that book?
Which one? The Rennie book?
Yes. To be very clear, guys, it's Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. That's the book. That's the cult.
For the most part, the people I've sent that book to are people who I admire and respect, who have asked questions about race, who I'm either kind of, I feel like, oh, maybe during the course of the conversation I haven't quite been able to articulate the points that I wanted to, because maybe they caught me off guard when they asked me, or because they're people who I genuinely think would really take something from the book and I want to have conversations with them later, but I want to make sure that we're both approaching it from the same kind of understanding about maybe like the language that's used when you talk about race.
How did it land?
So it's landed differently with different people. For the most part, people are initially shocked by the title, and slightly offended by the title. But then if there's somebody that I really like, want to engage with, I normally say, look past the title and read the book. I'm not saying that I don't want to talk to you about this and so on. And for the most part, actually, it's led to really interesting and changed perspectives from the people who I've given it to, because I don't think there is a lot of mainstream literature that deals with those topics. I think that we're used to talking about those topics and we're used to nuances, and actually when we read them, they resonate with our own experiences. Whereas if you're reading it as a person who is not black or even a person of colour, like at all, if you're just a white person who's lived in Britain, there are concepts in there which are completely foreign and totally new to you, and it can be a bit shocking, and it can be a bit kind of a wake-up exercise. But no, for the most part, everyone that I have given that book to about 10 people, and I would say 9 out of 10 of them have been really positive and quite grateful to have read it. Okay. One of them pretended that he hadn't got it. Yeah.
That's good though. That's very good. That is a very good click-through rate. That, you know, in any campaign, that would be a very, very good rate.
Yeah. But I think also, you know, I have got to an age now where the people who I'm friends with are likely to be people who would be receptive of that type of literature.
Yes.
So it's not necessarily a kind of representative response of people who would read it. I mean, you saw the backlash, I'm sure, that Rennie received for the book from a certain kind of group of people. And I can honestly say I definitely am not friends with anyone who would react in that way. So I kind of already had a skewed kind of focus group, so to speak, in terms of people I was sending it to.
Our MailChimp campaign was okay. Okay, so Deborah, what is the book that you gift the most out of all of the books in the world?
So mine's a bit different. It's not really about success or careers. Mine is The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman.
I love that book. There's a 5 Love Languages quiz online that I send to people as well. Like,
I use that book as a wedding present now. Whenever
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Gary Chapman, he's amazing. He's got a lot of books. Another one is Things I Wish I Knew Before I Was Married. I'm not married, disclaimer. But what I find is that generally how you are with your relationships at home, whether it's your partner, your parents, your siblings, generally reflects on the outside world, so in work or with your friends and things like that. So I take a lot of focus on trying to understand me and how I engage with those who are closest to me, and understanding why I react the way I do sometimes, or why I take things in the way I do, and try to depict it from there, which actually has had a very good translation into how I am in the workplace, how I am with randomers and stuff like that. So 5 Love Languages is my number 1 book.
And what are your top 2 love languages, Deborah?
My first one's acts of service. So for those who are not familiar, that's very loved by someone doing something for you. Yeah. And my second one is words of affirmation. So.
Oh, we're the same.
Everyone go read that book. All 3 of us have already. David, have you read the book yet?
No, I haven't.
But you're going to. Though.
Yes, I'm going to get through.
If all 3 of us are loving this book, then you know
that. Oh no, you should do like a BBBA book swap.
I know. I'm telling you, people have asked me so much. I can't. I know. I have to think about it. Because no, there's ramifications. There's relationships with publishing houses that I gotta figure out how that's gonna work. I have to think about how that's going to work. There has to be something about not just exchanging ideas between us, but also how does it get out there? And then I just remember how much books kind of changed my life, really. They got me out of where I was. And so I have to figure out how I do that with young people, to give them, and I don't want them to be just business books as well. I want like really big stories and fiction, and I don't know. I just have to think about how that works. I think.
You could do a Books That Changed My Life podcast, and you could have like Desert Island Discs, but with books, and then you could have like people from different like walks of life coming in and talking to you about the books and why that book has changed their life. So it's like a book review, but also like an opportunity for them to tell their journey, and you could get them each like a non-fiction book and a fiction book. You spend half an hour on one, half an hour on the other. Oh, that would be awesome. You should so do that.
Oh my goodness. I'm like, I'm writing it down on my thing. Zara, do you get that? Zara, I'm sorry, Zara. Yeah, Zara's on it. I'm like, I love Zara. Yes. We're on the same page, Zara. We're on the same page. Yes. Wow, that would be lovely, wouldn't it? And it could be everyone. Okay, so yes. David, what's your book?
Right, so I've got two camps here. So I'm big on Richard Branson's biography, but I'm a big advocate of biographies because, as you said before, people always see the arrival and most people don't know the journey. And if you read autobiographies, you begin to learn a lot about what it takes for you to be resilient and keep your mind on your long-term goals and your dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I mean. Also, The Power of Now. Again, which is yes, correct. So I'm a big self-love, self-help, self-love, self-discipline. But again, it's just the principles in the book around understanding just how for you to be in control in the presence is what you can control, and just begin to slowly kind of, I think, being aware of what brings kind of stress or worry. Being aware of it helps you be more in control in the moment. And the power of you just doing what you could do right now is what's going to get you from A to B, not sitting down and thinking over and over and over again. So it's a very simple book that just basically summarizes what we should know, but we tend to forget.
It's like a budget in a spreadsheet. We should know. We should.
Yeah, we should know. But
could have. But you're right. Biographies are so powerful. Is that when you say the Richard Branson biography? Do you mean losing my Sorry, I was saying losing my religion, losing my virginity?
Yes, correct.
Oh, finding my virginity or losing? Sorry, I'm looking at it right now. Oh, yeah, finding. It's finding my virginity, right?
Yes.
I got to give the titles because people are listening, so I got to help them out a little bit. And then, and of course, we have some. If you guys can't see my little shelf, I'm going to highlight it. Like up there, you'll see that there's Richard Branson, but there's also Michelle Obama's Becoming.
Oh, yes, I got tickets. Oh,
I know that those are like gold. Those are like dragon's teeth right there. That's like a Westeros. If you guys watch Game of Thrones, maybe not dragon's teeth. But yes, I'm sorry. Winter is coming. Yes. So yes, those are like dragon's teeth. Congratulations. You're gonna have to come back on the show and tell people how it was. Yesterday. This is my free public service announcement to everyone. I know we're about to finish, but Oprah, on Oprah's channel, if you like Oprah online, then she did a big interview with Michelle Obama yesterday. And so that it was on, I think, at 11 a.m. yesterday ET, so 4 p.m. our time. So you can look at the whole broadcast. And it is a lot of life. It's a lot of life having those two women in one broadcast. You're just like, whoa. It was almost an emotional kind of roller coaster for me. So looking forward to when we get her in the next few weeks. But yes, biographies are really important. Biographies really they're just so authentic and real. They show kind of the pockmarks of the journey, like the landmines and the stuff. And Richard is great in regards to really being authentic and open about sharing some of the real, the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all about the journey.
I haven't actually read it myself, but my friend Yash Zavary, whose judgment is like...
This is why we always talk about the book that you gift the most, because people like to go off on these book recommendations that they haven't actually read themselves.
But can I just mention this one bit? I feel like it had to be mentioned. Like, because the logic behind it always fascinates me, so I'm going to read this book. Arnold Schwarzenegger's biography. Just like, because,
He's amazing.
He's ridiculous.
He's amazing.
That was the governor of California, and he was
exactly.
He
barely spoke English.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
So fascinating. So Yash has like read me extracts or text me extracts of this book, and I think from the snippets that I've seen, I think it's really interesting. If anyone else has read it or like wants to talk about it, but like I think that's on my kind of one to read list, a book to read list, and that's something that never would have been on my spectrum, which is why I'm sharing it, because actually it's not something that would have even occurred to me to look for. And when Yash mentioned it to me, I kind of like was like, okay, like no.
No, it's amazing.
yeah, he's such an interesting man. He's such an interesting man, and he hasn't come up in the campaigns. He's safe to still enjoy. So
it goes back to the metamorphosis of success. So if you think about just the fact that he's changed, he's reemerged from his chrysalis how many times to change totally. He's like Snoop Dogg to me. I didn't even know what happened to Snoop Dogg. When I saw him on his cooking show with Martha Stewart, and I was just like, and
yeah, love that.
That's the best.
The courage that it takes to actually be successful is the first time, but then that second time, third time, fourth time in areas that are slightly adjacent to what you do. It's amazing. So it's something that we should all kind of look to. Because what's next for you, Deborah?
So I'm literally.
What do you want to tell people about? So we're about to close off. So what are you doing? What are you working on right now that you want to tell people about?
I'm currently reading this book actually by Paul Ferrany, and it's called Love Without Conditions. And the biggest challenge for me is unlearning things rather than learning. So I would definitely recommend it. I'm a quarter way through. So the first line, it says something about you've learned about conditional love from people whose love for you was compromised by their own fear. So it's like, it just messes with the mind. So for me, I'm on a journey of redefining things in my life. So yeah.
Can you say that all again?
Love Without Conditions, Paul Ferrany. Definitely recommend it. But be ready to have something slapped in your head. It's challenging.
Because even that line there, like I feel I'm going to use it somewhere in regard. I have to really examine, what do I have to unlearn? I've always considered myself a learner, a teacher, but then there are certainly some things that I have to unlearn. That's big time. Like I had to highlight that with my purple pen. See what's going on. It's like, well, I feel, oh my gosh, what do I have to unlearn? What's taking up room in my psyche, my brain? Okay, so then thank you for that. That was just the gift that keeps on giving. Okay, David, talk to us. What are you working on right now? What do you want to leave the audience with? Pieces of wisdom, gem, events.
Yeah. No, I think just leave it on I think summary of everything we're going to be discussing here. What's come out to me is about this piece of journey, and as Deborah was just saying there, like unlearning things you've learned. So even in the beginning, you were saying you think you're a success now, but you have so much more in life. You've still got a big journey ahead of you. You're going to unlearn things to make yourself better, as well as you're learning things to make yourself better. But yeah, just remember, it's a journey, not a race, but it's a fun journey despite the ups and the downs. It's great. So leave on that note.
It's a fun journey. Yes, maybe on the other side. Sometimes in the middle of it, it's not fun, but it will be fun. Like Sophie and I, sometimes we're in hysterics laughing about some of the absolute nonsense that we were crying at the time. I remember when we had our executive sponsors coming in, and we were holding an event at Virgin, and Virgin has their these seats, a meeting room where it's the actual airline seats. And I remember we opened up the airline seats, and Sophie and I are from pretty not traditional households, but we opened up the airline seats and they were so manky. And I have a picture of Sophie like in her nice dress, literally spraying, and we're like scrubbing. And it was about 5 minutes before all of our executive sponsors walk in, like the chairmen of the boards and the HR directors. And and it was just mank. And we thought we were gonna, but we laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny then. It wasn't funny. No, when I say mank, I can't. Just imagine an uncleaned airline seat. Like that's not. And running out to get to Disco to get the spray. So I still have that picture. She'd kill me if I put it on social media. But it's definitely been a journey. We laugh and we do take that time to celebrate the journey, right, David?
Yes, celebrate the journey. As you said.
On the back. Yeah. All right. Cool. There was a challenge for you as well in regards to patting yourself on the back. Regularly challenging himself to pat on the back. Challenging himself to regularly pat himself on the back. And we all know what your challenge is, Abby. It's the budget. So I'm just looking at the chat that's going on. It was the budget. We all know what that was. You put that stuff on.
I'm gonna write it down in like big letters now.
Exactly, and we're gonna check back with you as well.
You can spend your evening making your Excel.
Accountability. Exactly. And any last words? Any last bits of advice, Abby?
Yeah, so the thing that I'm working on at the moment, so I just got married. I got married in the beginning of September, and actually it's been a really interesting experience for me in terms of my kind of personal growth, because Jack has an equally strong personality to me. We did this marriage preparation course at Hillsong, and we were both told that our animals are that we're lions, and I think that basically sums us up. So
like two of them, like mine.
So I'm learning to be more objective about things. I think I'm an interestingly, it's been quite a rational person, but occasionally being quite unreasonable. And I think also because I'm obviously have to be like this like fearless advocate and be quite tenacious at work. I'm learning that actually sometimes winning doesn't mean winning an argument. Sometimes winning doesn't mean, winning at all costs, or, that kind of thing. So my kind of journey at the moment is focused around being more objective, taking a step back from things, recognizing that compromise doesn't mean that I'm losing, and also that if I win and Jack loses, we both lost, actually. We both need to win. So, and I think actually it's made me improve as a person generally, because like you say, Deborah, the way that you interact with people closest to you then has a knock-on effect on how you interact with others. I think my mum definitely thinks I'm a much calmer person since this relationship. So yeah, that's my little mission.
So it's winning
in the right way.
Winning in the right way. You're winning, because sometimes when you're you have to learn that the hard way. That sometimes when you win, that actually you lose.
Yeah.
And it's actually not worth it. Sometimes
Exactly.
I just let it pass. Sophie says I'm too nice all the time. She's like, you're just too nice. And I was like, well, what am I gonna do? Get in an argument with people? Start yelling at them in the place? That's long. I can't do it. Why wouldn't I just go and smell the flowers or go walk my dog? Like, I don't understand why. Like, to get in a big argument with someone. And I'm so glad there are some people, especially in this advocacy space, who are just like rah, rah, on Twitter, and they're just like, yeah, this and that, and I'm just like, is that really going to change the hearts and minds of the people? I'm not sure. So, but everyone has their role, I guess. And so, yes, winning is not always, or winning. Let me think about what does winning mean to me. Thank you, guys. I have been the student as well as the panel leader person. So thank you guys so much for being so sharing and authentic and open about your experiences, and just that's exactly what we need. Success by any measure, but certainly success on your own terms. And so thank you guys for that. Thank you everyone for listening. You guys are still here. I know we ran a little bit over because there was like 85,000 book recommendations from Abby. I hope you guys
Sorry.
I hope you guys all wrote them down. And as you know, yes, we're still taking your questions. If you guys have any questions, if you want to connect with these lovely, fine panelists, then just please let me know, and then we can send off the email to them. And next week, we are back again with Mentor Mondays, bringing you the best of business success on your own terms. That's my own slogan. I just made it up. Thank you guys.